introducing our speaker for today. Uh, so it gives me great pleasure to introduce Shahid Fazal Sheikh, who is a software engineer 2 at Microsoft. So Shahid has spent around, I think, 3 to 4, I guess it's basically 3 years, a bit more than 3 years as a software engineer in Microsoft. As you know, he is based in Redmond, Washington, but right now working from Vancouver, Canada. Uh, Before this, Shahid was also a software engineer at the Cerner Corporation for about 2 years. So Shahid has a MS in computer science from University of Buffalo. And before that, he did, as most of you, a bachelor's in computer science from the Kamala Nehru Engineering College in Nagpur. Okay. Shahid has, many skills. Too many for me to enumerate. Many of them I also cannot understand, but clearly, he has tremendous knowledge in all the important programming languages, including Python, Java, C Sharp, given that he is from Microsoft. And of course, he does front-end stuff too, so JavaScript. He is an expert in databases, all the frameworks that you can sort of, think about. This is your opportunity, mentors, to be able to sort of, benefit from his expertise. So please try to make it as interactive as possible so that, you can ask him the right questions and he can guide you all well. So with that, Shahid, pardon me if I forgot to mention something. You can sort of, add to my introduction. So with that, I will give it over to you.
Asim Saab. Okay, thank you. I think you exaggerated some of the things while speaking about me, but I'm just a normal person. In fact, I think many of the people here know more than me because new people these days have access to newer stuff, newer technologies. So I'm pretty sure many of the students know more than me in many areas. But anyways, I'll speak from my experience because it's been almost like 10 years since I did my bachelor's, and some of the stuff might sound old, but anyways, many of my slides are generic in nature because I know that many other mentors have already covered some of the specific stuff like data science and stuff like that. So I'll speak from a more generic perspective. But yeah, so I'll just talk about technical projects in computer science. This kind of stuff that computer science students have to do and usually do as part of their coursework, and which later benefits them in their pursuit of jobs and career as well. So why do we do technical projects? So it's either as part of the coursework, it's for fun, or maybe to learn something new. So many a times, most of the people, they do it as part of the coursework. If you are a computer science student, then as part of many of the subjects that you are studying, you are supposed to work on projects, technical projects, either individually or in groups. So you have to do it. And there are some geeks kind of people who do it for fun. There are many people who, can conceive of ideas very easily, and they also like to work on, some side projects and stuff like that in addition to their coursework, uh, and kind of make some, useful stuff like some web application or something, or just for fun. And then there are people who I usually used to be a mix of, number one and number three here. So I used to do projects as part of my coursework as well as to learn something new. So when I was studying bachelor's and master's, many of the concepts were new to me, like data mining and distributed systems and whatnot. So some of the projects were quite exciting to me, and I used to kind of learn a lot while working on them. Sometimes I failed, sometimes I succeeded, but yeah, I mean, many people learn quite a lot of things as part of doing their technical projects, which they might not while just learning theory. So technical projects in computer science are very important to do. So, how do you get I mean, what is the idea behind technical projects? I mean, if you are doing it as part of a coursework, uh, I can tell from my experience when I was doing bachelor's and master's. Sorry, is there any question? Okay. So, if you are doing projects as part of your coursework, then more often than not, the problem statements are already defined, as I mentioned there. I mean, if you are, let's say, when I was in masters, we had several different courses like operating systems or distributed systems. All these concepts within computer science that a computer science student needs to know of. So, as part of coursework, uh, often professors already have problem statements ready, and students are expected to implement those project ideas either in group or individually, whatever is the pattern followed as part of the coursework. Some people, they go out of the way. They conceive their own ideas, either to create something new, for example a startup or something. Many of the newer companies and startups that you see are uh, you know imagined as an idea first, which has not been implemented yet. And those are the kinds of projects that go a long way. I mean, those that are not kind of already thought of. Many of these successful startups begin as ideas. So uh, that's the second category of the ideas that lead to technical projects. uh, then, as I mentioned, there are other ideas that I mean, they are not necessarily new concepts. People just implement some of the existing ideas or some of the existing concepts just for the sake of learning. So for example, I worked on a project for on based on the concept of information retrieval, which uses which used information crawling from websites, and then con- concepts like for example collaborative filtering and stuff like that. What that means is, if you are logged into a website and you have some known contacts, then you will get newspaper article recommendations based on people's searches with similar profiles as you. I mean, if somebody with a similar profile and interest as you read that article, then you will also get that recommendation. So that's called as collaborative filtering. So I mean, all these concepts were known. I just wanted to work on a project which would reuse those ideas and kind of see how the implementation looks like. So that's the, I mean, another category. There might be more categories, but these are the things that I could think of. So you can find newer ideas or newer category of ideas, but many of them broadly fit into these. So what are the components of a successful group project? So many times you will find yourself working on a project as part of a group. I mean, especially as part of coursework. Some people do individual projects, but many a times they want you to do uh, group projects. I can say from my personal experience, because we used to do group projects in my bachelor's as well as when I did masters in the US. So it's very important to have a good understanding of what you are trying to achieve, what you're trying to implement. Basically, a good understanding of the problem statement, whether it's part of the coursework or something that you and your group of friends came up with. Okay, then it's very important to have a plan to for the completion of the project. I mean, you cannot just let the timelines, exceed, or you cannot just continue to keep working on something without a end date. Okay, this is especially important when you are working on a project as part of your coursework, or maybe as part of your work in your real job. Okay, and as I mentioned, as part of your coursework, and many of your students, so I think it's relevant to you. It's very likely that you will be working on a group project. So I can tell from my experience and my observations during my studies that group projects succeed only if you have a proper coordination among your teammates. Oh, was I muted? Sorry. Hello?
Yeah, Shahid, you were muted for a second, but you are fine now.
Oh, okay, okay, okay. Yeah, I was talking about group projects here. I was on this slide. Were you guys able to hear a good part of what I spoke about this slide, or I don't know.
Yes,
Anyways,
yes.
We
okay,
just, Shahid, we just lost you for 1 second or so.
okay. Sure, sure. So I was saying, I'll just pick up from where I may have been cut off. That is, I was talking about group project. That is, I can tell from my personal experience when I was studying bachelor's and master's that um, group projects are, uh, you know, can succeed only if you have a proper coordination among your teammates. So you need to first form a proper team. I mean, it's very important, first of all, to find a people with find a set of people with like-mindedness, in terms of project ideas, and people who you can trust in terms of distribution of work. What many a times what happens is, there are some people doing all the work, some people not doing much, some people don't do anything. So that is not good for the group, as well as not good for, at least not good for the people who are not doing anything, because they don't benefit at all. So you need to that's one of the components of a successful group project. Okay, this is very relevant for people who are students, I would say. And there has to be proper coordination, as I mentioned. So I'll maybe just stop here. Maybe if anyone has any questions, they can just speak, or you know am I my screen is not sharing? Okay, it is. I guess it's sharing. Fine.
Shahid, we are able to see the screen, but I don't know. We are right now seeing components of a successful
Yeah,
group.
that's the slide I am on. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. If anyone has any questions, then I can take the questions. Otherwise, I'll move to the next one.
Yeah, so I think students, this is your opportunity to ask any question that you have. You can either type it in the chat or you can unmute yourselves and ask. It is rare to get somebody from as big a company as Microsoft, somebody with this level of, actual, on a day-to-day work, coding experience and so on. So, please, if you have a question, we'll wait 1 second, unmute yourselves and ask, or just type in the chat room.
Okay, I
So,
think it
so
was.
typically, Shayad, it takes some time for students to
Yeah,
warm
yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
I mean, maybe they'll think of questions now and post it later. So maybe we can
yes,
move
yes,
forward. Yeah.
yes.
So maybe I'll just move to the next slide. So how do you go about doing technical projects in computer science? Okay, either come up with an idea or pick up an idea from either your coursework, or many people use online help to come up with an idea. uh, I know it's not possible to everyone cannot conceive of a new idea. I mean, otherwise everyone will be creating startups. But yeah, yeah, some students are entrepreneurial and have ideas ready. Others take online help to look up ideas, as I mentioned there. Um, the idea that you think of, whether it's your own idea or you something that you took help for online, it should be achievable. I mean, many people, I mean, depending on the context in which you are working on the project, let's say it's part of coursework or maybe just a, I mean, it should not be something very lofty. If it's not, I mean, if you are not thinking of building a startup, then uh, just do something that is achievable and helps you learn something. Yeah, as I mentioned, that I'm not discouraging people from having big ideas, because many people, many, these successful startups are actually ideas that are out of the box. But yeah, I mean, if you are doing it as part of your coursework or something, then make it achievable. In fact, this is not just limited to the coursework. In If you are working on in as part of your a company and working on a real job, even they only implement features and new offerings, like new products, which are achievable and can be sustained. They don't go they don't go totally out of the way. uh, this is very important. You should only do what you think uh, can be planned and achieved. At the same time, it should not be very simple, because today, I mean, you cannot just create a static, let's say for example, a static web page or something as a project. I mean, you need to do something more. I mean, because of the demands of the day and the age today, because there is a lot of competition out there. I mean, you see, there are, even I mean, not, I wouldn't say even in India. Actually, in India, there are more talented people, I would say. There are so many good colleges and institutions in India, and so many top-notch people in India. In fact, I come from a very mediocre college in India, but I know of people from NITs and IITs. They are much sought after by all these big companies. And if you want to compete with that kind of talent in India, then you need to kind of, what they say in modern language, like up your game, and you need to uh, you know build something good. If not the best, but at least don't be behind other people. Come up with some idea, take online help, try to implement some good concept, like let's say you want to do a distributed systems based project, a distributed programming, or let's say machine learning. I think many mentors did very good seminars uh, like past week as well, about machine learning, which is kind of a very hot field these days. You should definitely, I mean, these days, because those areas like machine learning and data science are very popular, so I think many students are already taking up projects in those areas. In my time, it was not that popular, or at least where I came from, it was not that known, but it was still a thing, but it was not something that many people were talking about. So we didn't do that. But you guys should do that, because machine learning, data science, and all these, distributed systems programming, all these are fields of future. So many students, especially computer science students, should take up projects in whatever is the current hot field, because that helps in future.
Shahid, one thing,
Ji.
Shahid, you could. I think your presentation is being shown not in full presentation mode.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Let me
So
do that.
if you want to,
Ji, ji, ji.
depending on your preference.
Yes, yes, yes. Is it
Yeah,
better now?
yeah, yeah. This is perfect. Yes.
Okay. So, I have left out data science here, because I just didn't want to interfere with other experts who have talked about data science and machine learning here. I just wanted to talk about generic uh, computer science projects that students usually do. Uh, you can. in your mind include data science and machine learning categories here as well, but I just came up with basic generic areas that people build their technical projects on. Like so many people go about building web applications, could be a static web app or a dynamic web application. Many people, want to, let's say, as part of their technical project, either as part of coursework or something that they want to do themselves, they want to bring up, let's say, some kind of a retail website like amazon.com, not amazon.com exactly, but maybe some kind of a retail website where you can simulate a retail experience like buying and selling and stuff like that. Um, then some people work on a small scale search engine, uh, for example, google.com, where you can enter uh, a search term and it would show suggestions for that search term, and then you click on that, it'll route you to the web page itself or to a list of search results. We actually built something like that in my master's. So we had a small scale kind of search box. I mean, it would simulate a search engine experience, and you type a search term based on the data that we have in our database. It would show up recommendations, and if you click on that, it will take you to a list of search results, and you click on that, it will take you to the actual website where the article is from. So, I mean, many people build different kinds of stuff. So that might fall under the web application category. Then many people built standalone desktop applications, like examples like Microsoft Word or Excel. So that is something that does not have to be connected to the internet. That is something that you develop locally, which can be like installed on a machine and stuff like that. And many people build mobile applications based on iOS and Android operating systems. So these are some broad categories. I mean, these days, as I mentioned, data science and machine learning are very popular. So you can just go about building applications based on those concepts, like some kind of a prediction model or something. Those are hot these days, so you can include that as a category here. But yeah, I mean, these are some of the broad categories that I could think of. Yeah, what is the technology that you will use for working on your project? I mean, it's very important to select proper technology. I mean, many times students are very confused what to use, whether to use C sharp or Java or Python, and because there are so many different coding languages and frameworks today, and it's not something that stays constant. I mean, languages keep evolving, new frameworks come every day. Within 6 months, one framework or language might become obsolete these days. I mean, the pace of evolution of coding languages and frameworks has become so fast today that many people used to build, let's say, uh, front-end applications using some JavaScript framework, for example, Angular framework. Angular 1.0, many people use, but now Angular 1.0, I think, may be obsolete. Angular 2.0 comes, it has new features and stuff like that. So I'm just giving an example that people often can get confused because there are so many different languages and options out there today. So uh, one way to kind of solve this problem is to think about what your project idea is, and based on that, do a selection of languages and frameworks to the best of your abilities. Like, and I talk about that in the next slide, I think. Yeah, because this is kind of a dilemma as to what kind of, sometimes, I mean, not all people will face that dilemma. Some people will. I mean, some people have already decided what kind of languages and framework to use. So, I mean, if your project is a web application, then many people go with Ruby on Rails and J2EE, that is the Java Enterprise Edition framework. And then if you're using C Sharp and ASP.NET is the framework to use. And many people also use the Django framework with the Python language. So these are all the different options for when you want to work on a web application. There might be more options, but I just noted down some of the popular ones. Ruby on Rails, I personally worked on when I joined my first company here in the US. They gave a small project initially, and it was on Ruby on Rails. So I found it a very good language, especially when you are working on a small scale web application. So every one of these languages and frameworks has their own advantages and disadvantages. So you need to kind of keep your project and its specifics in mind when selecting the language and the framework. So one thing that I can tell from experience is the way Ruby on Rails differs from, let's say, Java or J2EE is, if your application is going to cater to millions of records, for example, or hundreds of thousands of records, that is large amount of data, then usually people prefer Java based frameworks. Okay, but if it's like few thousand records and something that you want to come up with quickly, then many people choose Ruby on Rails. That's what our first project was about. So there are these small details that you should consider. I mean, and it also helps you learn about web applications in particular, and software projects in general. um, like what kind of scale your application will be having, like whether it will be a large scale application or small scale application. Because if you have an understanding of a scaling of an application, you can talk about it in your interviews, and it really helps. If you are building a data science or ML based application, then many people go with Python as an obvious choice, because it is a very powerful language with support for many machine learning and data science scenarios. Many people also, I think, use R. It is one of the other languages that people use for like because I have used R as part of my coursework uh, uh, in masters in the in University at Buffalo, but I didn't use that much. But I know that it is one of the options. But Python, I think, is the most popular option. uh, Many people also work on projects based on computer vision and C++. I've seen many people use C++ as a language of choice for working on projects in this area. Then language selection, especially for student projects, should be guided by which language or framework has wide availability of public document. This is very important. Okay, see, when you're starting working on uh, uh, projects during your coursework as students, many times you want to you don't know a lot of things about these languages and frameworks. So obviously what you do is you go to Google and search for, hey, how do I write this function? How do I uh, let's say, for example, to give you an example, how do I write a switch case right in this language? And how do I call an API and whatnot? I mean, all these different things that you can think of. So many languages and many frameworks do not have a very wide presence or online support. Okay, so many times if your language selection is not very popular, then you will not find a very good online support for that language, and you might get stuck. Not to discourage you from using that language, but this is probably one thing to keep in mind. So for example, Java has a very vast online community. So if you are stuck with any question on Java, then you will definitely find answers for it. I think somebody raised hand. Let me see if I can see. Oh, computer vision is another area within computer science where you can do projects like for example, you might be aware of this thing called facial recognition and stuff like that, right? I mean, based on you know some existing, I mean, faint images, they can do actual facial recognition and stuff like that. So that is one of the implementation of this field. I'm not aware of many other aspects of it, but you can search for it online as well.
There are a few questions,
Yeah, yeah,
Shahid.
yeah. Yes,
Take
yes.
them
I'm
now.
looking at those questions. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Is
there was one directed towards me, so I don't know whether you got to see it. Yeah, it is here. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Please
yeah.
go ahead.
What is the important? Oh, what is the what is the importance of data structures and algorithms and technical projects? I mean, see, uh, if you are, I can tell, I can answer this question maybe from my experience. So, when I was working on project for information retrieval, which I talked about earlier, that is during my master's, it was very important to make a good, a proper choice of what data structure to use for storing our data. Okay, so see, many of the times you might get confused which data structure to use. It's very important based on your problem statement to think of, how you will be using the data, how fast you want the data retrieval to happen, and based on that question you will also be able to find your answer. So for example, if you want a very uh, fast search, so what does so I'll give you example of Google from what I know. So I Google search is supposed to be very fast, right? I mean, they are expected to be very fast, and the search, so for example, when you type something on Google, it gives you recommendation. Let's say if you type AU, right? So it should it usually gives you a list. It immediately pops up a list which begins with AU as the word, right? Let's say you type AL, so then you'll see in recommendation algorithms or some other words that start with A. So there is some data structure that is behind that search happening. What I mean, and I think that data structure is called try. Okay, so they made that choice because search using that data structure is very fast. So I just gave you an example of how data structures and algorithms are important when you are working on a project. If you can justify, see, whatever data structures you are using in your project, you should be able to justify why you use that data structure or that algorithm in your project. If somebody asks, I mean, that can leave a very good impression that you have a good understanding of data structure and algorithms, right? In terms of algorithms, hey, why you used like a binary search mechanism to search for a particular data. So that could be one explanation or one implementation of algorithms. There are several different algorithms. I cannot talk about everyone here. And is building only web application full stack and going for interviews in large companies will help you secure a good one? I don't know. I mean, see, if you have a web application with which is kind of full stack with the front end and back end component, then definitely it will help you if you put it on your resume, on your LinkedIn profile, or if you upload the project on GitHub, for example. Then definitely, I mean, anything helps. Anything that you have done helps. The key thing is you should be able to talk about it really well. That is, you should be able to explain what you have done. Some people just claim that they have done something, but they don't. They are not able to explain what exactly they did, and that actually does not help with interviews and stuff like that. As a fresher or undergraduate, which technical area should be focused more, such as problem solving skills, learning programming languages? I think both are important if you're a computer science student. What is computer science? I mean, it's just basically analytical skills and problem solving. So you should be, because when you go for interview initially, I mean, that's what my experience has been. They won't ask you, at least big companies. I've interviewed with Amazon, I've interviewed with Google, Microsoft. They don't ask you language specific questions. They won't ask you, hey, how do you do this in Java, or how do you do this in Python? They'll ask you problems that are more focused on this. but that does not mean you don't learn programming language, because in order to answer this question you need to know this, right? You need to know the programming language. So it's very important for you to learn basic data structures and algorithms which help you solve problems in computer science. So what I would say is you should focus on your analytical skills. They Big companies, they ask you a general problem, and you are expected to propose a solution for that problem and even code for it. Okay, I mean, big companies, they just give you a whiteboard and a marker, and they expect you to propose a solution for the problem statement and start coding. Okay, so it's not enough to just learn programming languages. It You should be able to solve questions using them. What are your views on competitive programming? Competitive programming, could, I don't know, I mean, if you could elaborate on that question further. Competitive programming as in I mean, programming competitions online. I mean, I think it definitely benefits, because if you are, for example, hacker rank board, or many people have lead code accounts, they hold weekly contests, for programming, problem solving based on data structures and algorithm. And if you are doing that, I have not done that, but if you are doing that, then you are already ahead of many people. Can you tell us your journey? Should I continue with slides and address some of these questions later?
Sure, Shahid, you can certainly do that. And to the students, please keep on asking the questions. This is a great start. Those you who have asked, I'm sure all the questions will be answered. So continue asking questions, but then Shahid is going to continue with the presentation. Some of your questions will probably be answered in the presentation itself, but keep
Yeah.
on chatting away.
Yeah. Okay. Uh, so in the last slide, I think I talked about the what is that? I talked about the different language and frameworks that people decide on using to work on their projects. Then it's also important to kind of identify the IDE or the development environment for working on your project. So if you are working on something related to Java, then many people go with NetBeans and Eclipse. I don't know if there are new IDEs these days, but Eclipse is very important. Very popular, I would say. Even NetBeans. Visual Studio is another thing if you are using .NET framework based projects, right? Yeah, second point is very important, because Stack Overflow saves the day many times for many people. So as a computer science student, or as a person who has chosen to make his career in the software field, Stack Overflow is like online, you can say, Bible or something. What, I don't know what term to use, but many people find answers to their questions on Stack Overflow. You should develop a habit of using Stack Overflow to pose a question if you're stuck while doing your programming, or find answers. Um, Stack Overflow is a very good resource online. It's like a go-to place for many of these questions. Um, if you are using You should also be very good or become good at using online tools. Sometimes uh, let's say you are working on a client side project, you are using JavaScript, and you want to quickly test something online. You don't want to like deploy your application to test it. Then there are many online tools available, like JS Fiddle, to test out your JavaScript code. I mean, these are just examples that, I mean, I cannot present a very exhaustive list of, let's say, IDs or frameworks or online resources. I'm just telling you, I'm pointing you in a direction as to how you can use resources to the best of your benefits. Like what kind of tools and online resources and stuff like that. So always keep stuff like Stack Overflow and online editors in mind when, if you want to do things quickly. I also, gave a link. I'll share this presentation, but I gave a link of, essential tools that somebody has compiled that come in very handy for computer science students. Uh, yeah, another important thing. as a computer science student, these I mean, you should be aware of publicly available APIs. So this is very important if you are like uh, thinking of working on some project idea of your own, if you want to like have access to some online available free data, right? So many companies, they expose their data through APIs. What you usually have to do is go create a developer account. So I can give you an example. For example, if you want to do an analysis of tweets, right? So you can go to twitter.com, create a developer account, and computer science students should be very proactive in all these areas. Like if you, because these days there are so many different resources available online that were not available like 10 years ago, for example. So you should be very good at, many of these terminologies like APIs, developer accounts, and whatnot, right? So for example, for Twitter, if you want to create an application that would analyze some tweets and present some data based on your analysis, so what you would do, you would choose Twitter as your medium for creating this application. You will go to Twitter, create a developer account. Note down this term, developer account, because we do this even in during our work. So right now I'm working on, let's say, I don't know if many people, I think many people use Apple. There is this thing called Apple Business Chat. So we are working on integrating Apple Business Chat, for example, in our product. So for that, even at work, we need a developer account for Apple Business Chat, for example. So similarly, even for small scale projects that you will work on as a student, just for either for fun or for learning or as part of your coursework, I don't know. But what you need to do is you need to create a developer account for Twitter. Then that gives you access to some of their APIs. Then let's say you create a small application either using Python or Java or whatever, you can call Twitter's APIs and get some of the publicly available free data, right? Some tweet statistics, not the actual tweets maybe, but because some of that may be private data, but some statistics related to tweets. And based on the data that you fetch from the APIs, you can do some analysis. So just giving an example, there might be hundreds of examples like this. Just giving an example how to use publicly available APIs. So as I mentioned, many companies and organizations expose APIs which make available huge amount of data. And this comes in very handy when you want access to data, and on that data you want to do some kind of project work. So, as I mentioned here, engineers and researchers, even people doing PhD and whatnot, big kind of academic work, also they use either freely available data, or they probably even pay for data to run analysis on them. And maybe, so as an example, we use it for some machine learning based projects to come up with some prediction model or something, right, based on that data. Or you could use these APIs to come up with a simple dynamic web application, like say a weather related app or something, right? So, I mean, so the point of this slide is, as computer science students, you should be very familiar with many of these, catchphrases and, terms like APIs and developer accounts and all these things. This becomes very helpful going forward. Uh, how is a tech project done best? Actually, I don't know the exact answer to this, but I can tell from my experience. I mean, while it's not important that, I mean, it is important. I should have worded it differently. It is important that you you complete whatever you set out to do, but sometimes you are not able to. What is even more important is that you should understand and fully comprehend what you did, because this point here, sorry, this point here, sometimes many people ignore this. I mean, they just are concerned with hey, this is just part of my coursework, I'll just have to finish this to get credits and whatnot, get my grades. That's actually, in my experience, I found this to be very harmful. And I'll also tell you how doing this thing right helps you in future. So you should be able to fully understand what you did, even if you were part of a group project and you only did a part of it. You should be able to understand uh, at least whatever you did fully, and the best thing is to understand the whole thing fully, even if it was a group project. You should not be blindly copying code from web or asking someone else to build the project for you. I mean, this is a very big no, because it harms you only. The other person who is doing most work benefits a lot. So you don't know, you actually want to share the learning. Okay, if you understand what you did, you can present your work and also address any questions asked about it. See, I'll talk about these 3 points together. uh, when you are working on some project and you are faced with questions while working on that projects, like faced with difficult choices, which technology to use, which framework to use, which data structure to use, why did I do it this way and not that way? All these things you can only understand if you are involved with that project, right? And if somebody asks you about this, and especially important, it becomes especially important if you are claiming to have done that thing on your resume or on your LinkedIn profile, whatever it is. Because if you are claiming something, then you will be asked, if you are called for an interview, and there you might get asked, hey, what did you do as part of this data uh, uh, what is it, distributed system projects that you mentioned on your resume? Then you should not be like you should not become silent there. You should be able to explain what you did, because that helps with the interview. When I came for Microsoft interview, they asked me what I was actually doing in my previous company. So because I had full understanding, some of the stuff I did not understand, so I took help from other people to understand the entire project pipeline, because I only worked on part of it, but you are expected to be aware of the entire end-to-end flow of your application or your product or project, right? So if you have that understanding, even if it's a small scale project, then it helps a lot, because you will definitely get asked a question, and interviewers might get impressed that okay, this person knew what he was doing and he had full understanding of what he was doing. So this is very important. Just don't ignore this aspect. I mean, and even if you don't complete it but have a full understanding of whatever you did, you are better than somebody who completed it and didn't understand it. Yeah, I mean, here I just wanted to kind of talk about my experience, what kind of projects I did. So I think I already mentioned. So I was doing masters in 2014 and 2015. I worked on uh, projects based on distributed systems programming, distributed systems, and data mining and information retrieval. All these concepts were new to me at that time, and the projects were quite uh, useful in terms of for learning experience. You will definitely get a chance to work on these projects, either in your these kinds of projects, either in your bachelor's, or if you decide to go for higher education. You should definitely use the opportunity to the fullest. Don't just kind of do it for the sake of completion. I'm not saying that I'm not guilty of that, but I many a times you learn from experience, and I am telling you from experience that uh, just get fully involved in the project, okay, because it helps at a later point. I did some individual projects as well as the group projects. The distributed systems project that I did was an individual project, but there were other projects like those based on information retrieval and data mining. They were group projects. So as I mentioned in one of the previous slides, that when doing a project in group, it's very important for a very good coordination between all the different group members and proper distribution of work. You should not be a kind of you should not be relegated to not doing anything or very small amount of work. You should be actively participating in doing your part of the work, and try to work on critical aspects of the projects. Just don't do smaller insignificant work there. So just the point of this slide probably is to talk about how important it is to be proactive when working as a group, or working as on an individual project, uh, and try to basically not take uh, things lightly and understand everything. uh, yeah, benefits of doing uh, projects: you get grades if you are working doing it as part of your coursework. You get to learn, definitely. Don't ignore this aspect. I mean, don't do it for the sake of completion. I cannot stress this enough. It does make a difference in job interviews and even master's application. If you are doing it as part of the bachelor's, then you can, uh, if you are if you want to pursue higher education, you often have to write letter of intent and statement of purpose, and you also attach other documents like other information related to you, like your resume and your LinkedIn profile and whatnot. You can mention some of the stuff that you have done as part of your coursework or as a side project, which is not part of your coursework. Um, so it definitely helps. Okay. And if you are able to successfully complete something, it motivates you further to do more, in the field. Many people use this to their advantage, having successfully completed something. And they also do online freelancing. Not just that, they also contribute to online projects, uh, which is not necessarily freelancing. So many people make open source contributions with and then mention it on their resume, which makes their resume even more attractive. So for example, contributing to some publicly available library and stuff like that. Okay, so that I mean, working on technical projects either in individual capacity or as a group projects definitely helps in uh, all these areas. Yeah, I think I already mentioned that technical projects at work or school are not the end. If you are really interested in your field of study, and if you're really interested in like software projects, many geeks, they often end up finding time to make open source contribution. This is actually very very good, makes your profile looks very good. I have not contributed to online open source projects, but I've known and worked with many people who have, and they often have more knowledge than other people, because they know how to kind of they know the specifics of different online frameworks and libraries, and they uh, apply that knowledge even in their day-to-day work. So if you're able to find time to do this, then definitely do make open source contribution. For doing that, you need to basically understand the project, which again helps you learn and grow, right? Understand the project, pull down the repository from GitHub and make some changes and then push it. All this sounds very fun and very I mean, great learning experience. So you should, if you are able to do that, you should do that and put it on your resume that, hey, I contributed to this online library, online SDK and whatnot, right? I just provided a short list of websites where you can find some project ideas. So this is people can refer to this. I mean, this is again a very kind of sample list of APIs on these websites. You can hit these APIs and get some sample data if you want to work on some project based on uh, freely available data. So just kind of as an awareness, I shared this. I think this is the end of my slides. Maybe we can go to questions. So I think I left at this point.
Sure. So, Shahid, you can maybe then switch off the presentation, and then we can, all of us
Yeah.
can sort of
Yes.
have a conversation. So, students, again, it's important to ask questions. Here is your opportunity. Just raise your hand. We will ask you to ask the question directly. Uh, this talk is about projects, but you can also ask questions relating to other aspects of preparation for interviews, or uh, programming related, or anything related to sort of software development, front end, back end, whatever. This is your opportunity. So
Yeah. Yeah. So I'll maybe just take questions in the order that people have been typing. So somebody asked me, tell us your journey on become SD2 at Microsoft, focusing on how your learning evolved over the years as there are many changes in technologies, what changes, challenges you faced, what is the most used and recommended technology. So I came to US, did my masters, joined some company, interviewed for it first, got an opportunity, worked there, and then I applied for SD position at Microsoft after 2 years. And SD2 I became like last year. I got promoted, but I didn't join directly as SD2. Then actually, what all how your learning evolved, I mean, as you work you get to learn a lot of stuff. You get to work on live projects, handle big amount of data, understand customer requirement and all those things, and come up with propose solutions. It leaves an impression on your higher ups, your manager. Yeah, this guy is proposing solutions to some problems, and this helps your career progress. And then it's important to learn newer frameworks and all those things, but many times on your job you find yourself working with at least at Microsoft, you find or big companies, you find yourself working with existing frameworks that those companies use. So in my experience at Microsoft, I've mostly worked with C Sharp and ASP.NET framework, and JavaScript and all those things. So, uh, I mean, it's important to learn languages, but as I mentioned in one of the previous slides, if you want to target big companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft, you need to, in addition to learning programming language, just pick one or two one programming language and focus on algorithm and data structures also, because many of these big companies, they want people with good analytical skills who can solve these problems, logical based problems, right? So just perfect your algorithm and data structure game, like try to solve problems on hacker rank, lead code and all those, because I mean this is specifically important for computer science students. What is the importance of framework of programming, and can I get a job without knowing? Yeah, I mean, see frameworks, like there are different kinds of frameworks, like I think um, ASP.NET framework, and then in Java you have like I think this Spring framework and all those things. You, I mean, you don't need to know these frameworks. Absolute. I mean, if you know them, it's good. But uh, if you don't know them, it's not like you will not get a job. I mean, it also depends on job market. I cannot comment on that, but uh, if you if your analytical skills and algorithm data structure solving based problem solving skill is good, then it is one of the essential components of finding a job these days, I would say. I'll also encourage you to learn about these frameworks. I mean, there is no stopping at learning anything. Uh, I don't think I can answer a no to that question. You can get a job, but it's always better to know as much as you can. Okay. Which will be the best online editor for under? I mean, this is a generic question. I don't know. I mean, depends on what kind of language and framework that you want to work on. What is your advice to people who recently got introduced to API and want to do a unique minor project? I mean, just create. So as I mentioned, the example of Twitter, just create a trial Twitter developer account, for example. They expose some APIs. Just maybe let's say build a Python. Uh, Small Python based projects called Twitter APIs by supplying your Twitter developer account secret and key. Okay, it will allow you to call their APIs, get the data, do some analysis. I mean, that's one small idea that I can think of if you're talking about a small minor project. The idea has to be yours. I cannot propose an idea. You can think about an idea yourself or come up with an idea using online help. But try to make use of all these APIs and play with the data. It will definitely help you with working with your technical projects. Should you have your hands on each and every domain? I don't think so. I mean, I don't have an expertise in many areas. Only a few things that I can think of. Like See, you don't have to know all the languages. You don't have to know all the frameworks. You don't have to know all the concepts. I mean, as a computer science students, you are expected to have general idea about basic fundamental concepts like databases and of operating systems and computer networks. If somebody asks you about you know basics of databases, you are not expected to not know the answer. You are expected to know the basics of it. You are expected to know the basics of computer networks and like TCP, UDP, and all those things, because they might be helpful in answering some of the questions. And you are expected to know these days the concepts around distributed systems, because many of the online, not online, many of the common products that we use these days, they are distributed systems like Amazon and whatnot. So you are expected to know some of these concepts, but you are not expected to know everything, like all the languages and frameworks. So I think I can move to next question. How to manage mental pressure at work? I, I mean, it depends on person. I don't know how to answer that. It depends on you as a person and what kind of work environment you have. And generally at big companies, I don't know about Amazon. I work at Microsoft, but Microsoft is generally known for slightly better work-life balance. You are not put under stress deliberately. I mean, you will want to finish your work, and sometimes you might feel pressurized. I mean, without anyone putting you in under pressure, but usually people don't tend to kind of force things on people at work. It might differ from one company to another. If finally I want my own startup, should I work in a company for a few years and then go and start my startup and directly go forward with my startup? I mean, I many people, they I think they directly uh, go and start their startups. Some people work for some company first and then go about their own way, create their own companies. So people do both kinds of things. I cannot answer you that question.
Yeah.
It's
So
based on
so
your
just
abilities.
Yeah, so just to add to that, of course, people stopped their education and started companies. People have
Yeah,
dropped
yeah,
out of
yeah,
college. Depends upon the idea. Like you have something revolutionary and you think
that's
you have
right.
the skills to, do it, then clearly, you don't need experience. But
Yeah.
obviously, depends upon the idea and ways, uh,
Yes.
and whether you know that you can actually pull it off,
Achieve
right?
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
achieve that. Yeah, that's right.
exactly.
So next question is, if you had to choose between Java and Python for problem solving, which would have been a better option? Which would have increased your efficiency for campus placements? I mean, see, both of these are very popular languages. Java, I think, is at the top. Python is almost, reducing the gap. Both of these are very popular. If you know either of these, it should be more than enough. I mean, in some cases, Python might be better if you are more focused on data science and machine learning. Uh, but I won't say one is. I mean, I won't recommend not learning either of these. I mean, you can just pick any one of these, because in interviews I have seen people use both of them with equal measure. I recently I also got an chance to some my manager asked me to interview some candidate, so I interviewed some candidate and she used Python. So I mean, the basic structures or basic flow of the logic is same whichever language you choose. Some of the concepts, like how to write a for loop and all those things, they differ. But again, uh, if if given a choice, let's say between Java and Ruby on Rails, maybe I'll choose Java. If Python and Ruby on Rails, see, I think maybe the right question is this: I'm working on a machine learning project, and Python and Rails, Ruby on Rails is the choice. Which one should I go with? I will say Python, because Python is has the most support for machine learning. So depends on what kind of project you're doing.
So I
And
think again, just to highlight, Shahid, regarding this question, and this question comes up regularly in many of the talks.
yeah,
So I guess the one way to sort of address is to say that pick one language, become an expert in it,
that's
uh,
right. Yeah,
use that for doing data structures and algorithms,
yes,
uh,
that's right.
and do it lead code or whatever hacker rank wherever you are basically
Yeah. In fact,
practicing
I
it.
will add to that. I'll add to that. I'll agree to that because I myself use Java for whenever I interview. When I was in masters, did my group projects and individual projects using Java, and when I interviewed at my company, first company, I used Java. Even when I came to Microsoft, they don't use Java here quite a lot. I interviewed with Java because I knew Java only. So Asim sir's advice is very good. Just pick one language and try to solve questions online in that language and stick to it at least while you find a job. Then later on, if you want to kind of diversify, you can.
Yeah, in fact, actually, the critical thing there is if you're already good in one language, then I think your focus should be on becoming experts in data structures and algorithms
That's right. Yes, correct,
rather than
correct.
learning another language, right? Because
Yes,
there's no point in learning languages, one
yes,
after.
yes, yes. That's right. I am currently studying BTech third year CSE and working predominantly on DS and ML. What can be best option after bachelor's? Doing masters in USA right after BTech or get some experience, specifically considering the present scenario of the field in the USA. I mean, this question. See, many people I've seen, many people what they do is they get some experience. I mean, I'm not saying that's good or bad, but I've seen both kinds of cases. People many a times come right after doing their bachelor's if they have good grades and good projects in the during their bachelor's, good academic profile, they end up getting good university in the US. If your end goal is doing masters in USA, I'll answer from that perspective. Uh, Many people come directly after bachelor's, and they start early. They get to start early. At 21 years of age, you will be starting your masters in the US. By 23, you will be done. And after 23, depending on what university you did your masters from, you have very good chances of finding jobs in good companies. I mean, I have seen, because I did masters in the US. I have seen uh, this university where you did masters from actually sometimes, at least to a certain degree, matters uh, in terms of which companies call you for job interview. Because I didn't get called from some of the bigger companies when I was doing because I did masters from university at Buffalo. I mean, I got call after applying online. They didn't come for campus. Okay, they Amazon went to campus for example at a University of Arizona. Okay, Arizona State University. It's a very good university. They didn't come to our university. Okay, but it's not like you if you apply online you won't get a call. But my thing is, in order to answer your question, I would say, see, if your academics are good, if you are from a very good college in India, and if your academics are good, your grades are good, you have a good academic profile in terms of the projects you did and all those things, then maybe right after your bachelor's you have a good chance of finding a good university in the US. But sometimes people don't have that thing, so they take some experience, and they are still focused on doing masters. Get some good experience in India if you can, and then after 2 years or something, maybe they find time to apply for masters and get into a good university based on these different combinations, like good grades at whatever college they studied from India and experience as
Yeah,
well.
there's one more thing I just wanted to highlight here very quickly. You know, you want to go and do an MS. Again, remember, what are you going to do after an MS? You are again going to apply for jobs, right? So, irrespective of when you do your MS, right now your focus should be on becoming good in data structures and algorithms. Because
Correct.
ultimately, the moment you go and start doing an MS, you are applying for internships. The grind is exactly the same. The interviews will focus on exactly the same stuff. And so, I think if
Yes,
you don't have expertise in this,
exactly. Yes. I mean, in interviews, it has become quite uniform these days in terms of the kind of questions asked. I mean, algorithm data structure should be your uh, focus. I mean, to kind of perfect yourself in those areas, because most of the companies are asking that. So yeah, just focus on
So,
that as well.
uh, if I may, can I add
Mhm.
a little more to what
Ji,
you guys have said?
sure, sure.
A lot questions like these, there is no one answer, right? It really, really depends on your own situation. And
Yes,
so it's hard to answer, specifically questions like, what is better. It has to take into account your, aptitude, your financial
correct.
background. And so what I would suggest is mentees should tackle these kind of questions with their assigned mentors on their personalized sessions, because over a period of time they have come to know you. They will be in a much better position to ask open-ended questions like this, and we should focus on asking questions that are related to either the topic that is being presented, or
Yeah,
more not closed-ended questions. So that would be my advice.
correct, correct. Yeah, I
this
agree.
is Motasim Najib Saab. So, just for
Yeah,
identification purposes.
Thank you, Asim.
Thank you, everyone that answered my question.
Very
I'm
good,
done.
Heather. You can mute yourself, Heather. Yeah,
Means new
okay, good.
languages coming up daily. So is it good to work on? Oh, C++. I think I've heard about C++. I have not personally worked on C++. But I have heard that C++ is very much in demand in certain areas. I mean, there are not many C++ developers. Okay, I mean, you should not feel that if you are working on C++, then you are losing out on something. No, you are actually one of the few in. You probably have a chance of being one of the few in demand, you know. C++ knowledge holders. So you should definitely. I mean, if you have created an expertise in C++, you should hold on to it, and you should not forget doing that. Uh, Learn other languages also. I mean, if you can learn Python or Ruby, you should learn them. But if you have knowledge of C++, then you should highlight it on your resume, because that might actually get you calls from certain employers who prefer C++ experience holders. So it's really good if you know C++. What is a good backend project? I mean, if you want to work on something that is maybe some web application that holds some backend data, right? You can create a database heavy application. You can integrate some, let's say, SQL database into your project and store some data into that. One example that I can think of is you can there are online crawlers available. You can crawl data from let's say news website, for example Washington Post. I did one project where we crawled data from New York Times and Washington Post, their old articles, basically using their APIs. Again, you have to create a developer account with them, so keep this term in mind. You can crawl data from their websites, you can store it in the database, and then you on whatever project you are building, like let's say you are using Java, then you can uh, connect to the database and do some processing on the data. I mean, just giving an example, so that can be done. Initially, I started data structures using C++ since I was advised that you can pick any language. But during recent Infosys round for placements, options were only Python and Java. I think Indian company, I don't know. I mean, see, language should not matter. See, I think in many companies in India, they have a kind of a rigid set of requirements. I would say that you should only know Java or Python. I don't have an answer for that. Maybe that's what I mentioned in one of the previous points. That until you get a job, maybe see, if based on the local situation in India, if they are demanding Java, then maybe certain companies are demanding Java, then maybe it's better idea to just, there is not a whole lot of difference between, let's say, the way you code for uh, data structure and algorithm problems. I mean, the flow is same. There are certain differences in how you write a certain, let's say, for statement or which state while statement and stuff like that. But I don't know how to answer this question. If there is a rigid requirement in India, then I don't know. I mean, they should not put that requirement that if somebody is using C++, then they will not prefer that person, but only prefer people using Java and Python. Uh, yeah, I don't know how to answer that. I mean, it's better to know different kinds of languages, but just focus on one. It's not like if you know C++, you won't get a job. Maybe some other company, not if not Infosys, right?
Yeah,
Moving.
just to add to what you just said, I mean, we've been saying the same thing over and over again. Pick one language and focus on becoming a master. Picking another language is not that difficult. Now, most companies will not specify
Yeah,
knowledge of a particular language. If they do, ignore that company. That's not
yeah,
for you,
exactly. Yeah,
because
I
you
mean,
can't learn 50 languages, right? You
that's
can't
right.
anticipate where you're going to get a job. So stay with
Yeah.
the advice that has been given to you over and over again. Learn one language, pick one of the popular ones, be good at it. And you, if you go to Microsoft and if C Sharp is the lingua franca there, you can pick it up. The
Yeah,
companies, most good companies don't expect you to be
don't expect. They are
uh,
language
yeah.
agnostic. Yeah. I mean, as I mentioned, I when I came to Microsoft for interview, I used Java. They didn't care. They only care about your problem solving skills. So that's the kind of hallmark of a good company. So just pick one language, and just focus on your problem solving skills using that language, I would say. To be a good software developer, in which areas do we have to be perfect, like language DBs? I mean, pick one language. Again, the same advice I would say: pick one language and focus on algorithm and data structure problem solving skills, and know the fundamental concepts. You mentioned DBs. Know the fundamental concepts of computer science. Know what database is. Know what computer networks are. Know what an operating system, basic concepts of operating systems and distributed programming and whatnot. You should know fundamental, at least something about fundamental concepts of computer science. You should not be like ignorant about, totally ignorant about some of these concepts. You should know at least something about them. As an interviewer point of view, if the candidate is best in his her problem solving skills, still the candidate doesn't have any good projects. So are there any chances that I mean, many of these questions, I mean, many of these points depend on the job market, and some of the times the job market is very good, the requirements are lenient, so they hire in bulk. Okay, but see, I mean, don't focus on I mean, focus on you as an interviewee, not on the interviewer. You just perfect yourself, make your profile better, enhance your skills, enhance your language skill, enhance your data structure as a computer science student, enhance your problem solving skills using data structure and algorithm. I would recommend everyone here to become familiar with lead code and hacker rank. I mean, that's where most of the software geeks can be found. I mean, in terms of problem solving. There are weekly competitions. Again, I have not participated because I'm busy with my job, but students should. I mean, there are weekly or monthly coding competitions. That's how you perfect your skills with problem solving, and that helps you with job as well. So do that at least. And uh, I mean, as part of your coursework, you should you do get a chance to work on projects. So it's not like you haven't done any project. Just work on some projects as part of your coursework while you are a student, and highlight that on your resume. I worked on this. And remember one advice from one of my previous slides, that you should completely understand what you did. I mean, even if it's a small scale project, or you know not a very flashy thing, just understand what you did, be able to explain it end to end, and you should be able to justify your choices, uh, and all those things.
Yeah, I think one important thing to highlight here is that because of the pandemic, many of the courses are probably, because of online education, I think course projects have become very difficult, and so I think
Yeah,
people
that is right. Yeah, probably
suffering
I missed
from
that
that
point. Yeah,
perspective.
yeah, that's true. Many people suggest to move on to Java or C++ from Python for studying DS and Algo in order deeply to go through the concepts and to do well in interview. What is your suggestion? Should I practice two languages in parallel? Again, I have seen people solving DS and Algo uh, problems using Python. So I don't know who suggested that. I mean, maybe they have their reasons, but Python is also a very good language for answering DS and algo based questions. In fact, Python also is very user friendly, I would say, uh, as much as Java. So just pick one language, and focus on that. Okay. Python is in fact very popular. I don't know why people would give that advice. So just stick to one language and focus on that.
I think we are nearing the end. So if there are some concluding thoughts, which Muhtassim Najib Saab or Shahid can. There's one more question, I guess. Yes.
How much time
And
period is required to master data structures and algorithms, and what the topics of data structures that should we focus more? What I see, it depends on person, but there is no time limit. See, data structure and algorithm is a vast ocean. I mean, can you cannot. I mean, see, you can become very familiar with many of these different data structures and algorithms. Maybe at one point you can claim to know all of them, but uh, it's a continuous process. See, I when I was preparing for interview, I prepared for almost 2 months for Microsoft interview. I could solve any uh, easy or moderate level question given to me. I could propose a solution, some of them even hard level questions. But then once you are done with your interview, and once you are like you join your job, you get out of touch. Okay, then you forget many of those things. Then again you have to get back into practicing if you are preparing for another interview. So the time period depends from person to person, their grasping power and stuff like that. But it's a continuous process. Just keep in mind, you need to kind of keep solving problems to stay in touch with these concepts. And uh, I mean, your point is right. When I see entire data structure, it looks very lengthy and much time consuming. I mean, see, there are different kinds of data structures, like strings and arrays and linked list and graphs and trees and whatnot. When you are preparing for an interview for Amazon or Microsoft or Google, you are expected to know about these data structures. So let it take 2 months, because if you are preparing for these big companies, you prepare well, you take your time. You don't want to miss the chance of joining these companies, so you have to prepare well, and you have to kind of solve questions using these data structures. That's what I did before coming for Microsoft interview. So I used to solve 2 or 3 questions every day on IDE, and used to like maybe many more on using pen and paper. You have to understand as many data structures as possible. Again, you cannot cover all of them, but you have to cover as many as possible, at least those which are very frequently asked. So again, it's an ocean, but yeah, try to do as much as you can. Could you please elaborate on problem solving? I mean, problem solving skill is, let's say you are, if you go to lead code, you will see so many different problems there. Like for example, they will ask you a problem saying, here is an array. How do you find, for example, the uh, least longest common subsequence, for example, longest common subsequence in a given string. So that's one problem. How do you solve it? They will give you some sample string, and they'll ask you to find a longest common subsequence, and then in your programming language that you will try to uh, take in that input string, and then process it using whatever data structure and try to arrive at a solution. That given any string, you want to find a longest common subsequence or substring in that string. So just giving you an example, just go to lead code, you will find so many different problems there. What subjects should we revise before giving an interview? I mean, what are important subjects? I mean, this is not an interview is like test. I mean, a real interview with a real big company is like they if the interviewer is good, then maybe they'll ask you uh, some concepts also of computer science, maybe like basic concepts of database, and all these different fundamental computer science concepts. So as I mentioned previously, you definitely should know fundamental concepts of computer science in addition to uh, good problem solving skills like data structures and algorithms, using at least using one programming language. Okay.
Motasam Sab, if you have anything to add, otherwise we'll end the thing soon.
No, I just want to thank, it was a great presentation, very difficult question, and Fazal handled it very well. I appreciate the knowledge that I think a lot of mentees got. So other than that, no, I don't have anything to add, Asim.
Yeah, so I mean, I completely agree that this was a wonderful talk. As usual, I learned quite a bit, and I'm glad that I was able to hear it. So once again, thank you very much, Shahid, for
No problem.
helping the students. We will share your PowerPoint if it
Yeah,
is
sure.
okay. Uh,
Yeah,
to
absolutely, please go ahead.
yeah, so when you'll have to send it to me, and then I'll
Yes.
post it on the student WhatsApp group.
Yes,
So thank you very much. Appreciate it a lot. Inshallah, we will have you again in the future
sure,
for many wonderful things. Okay, so
inshallah. Okay, all right. Assalamu alaikum.
wa alaikum assalam.
Wa alaikum salam.